All right, so we're about to tackle, like this historical riddle that's been bugging people for ages.
Boom.
Did a secret society shrouded in mystery and whispers of the occult actually influence the rise of Nazi leadership?
Wow.
We're talking about the Thule Society, active in Germany right before the Nazis came to power.
Okay.
Think secret meetings, shadowy figures, and connections to some of the biggest names in the Nazi regime.
Yeah, it's captivating, isn't it? This idea of a hidden hand shaping history.
It really is.
And today we're going straight to the source, using an academic article from the Journal of History for the public to see if those rumors hold any weight.
So no dusty conspiracy theories here. We're going straight to the scholarly source.
Why?
What can you tell us about this Thule Society? Were they really chanting spells and plotting world domination?
Well, maybe not spells, but their origins are definitely interesting.
Cool.
They actually emerged from a group called the German Orden, founded back in 1912.
Okay.
Picture Germany on edge, right? You've got the Morocco crisis shaking things up internationally.
Mm-hmm.
And internally, the Social Democrats are gaining political power.
Yeah.
This really fueled anxieties among certain groups, you know?
Sure.
The German Orden tapped into those fears, seeing enemies everywhere.
So kind of a breeding ground for paranoia and extreme nationalism?
Exactly. They were particularly suspicious of the Freemasons,
Okay.
who they saw as part of this massive conspiracy against the German people.
Oh, wow.
It's within this atmosphere that Rudolf von Sebendorf, a key figure in our story, steps onto the stage.
Okay, so we've got a society obsessed with conspiracy theories and a guy named Rudolf von Sebendorf.
Right.
Sounds like the start of a spy novel.
It does, doesn't it?
What did this Sebendorf do?
Well, he was tasked with revitalizing a struggling southern lodge of the German Orden in Munich.
Okay.
He had this charisma about him drawing in new members and breathing life back into the group.
Uh-huh.
But things really took a turn after World War I with Munich in total chaos.
Oh,
The German Orden transformed into the Thule Society.
okay.
And during the tumultuous period of the Munich Soviet Republic, they went full-on secret agent mode.
Hold on, secret agent mode? What were they doing sneaking around in trench coats and exchanging coded messages?
Well, maybe not trench coats,
Okay.
but they were definitely involved in espionage and sabotage for the government in exile in Bamberg.
Wow.
They were operating in the shadows, trying to undermine the communist regime that had taken control of Munich.
Oh, wow.
This dangerous game. And it all came to a head in a dramatic police raid on April 25th, 1919.
This sounds like a scene straight out of a movie. What happened during the raid?
The police stormed the Thule headquarters and seized a list of members.
Mm-hmm.
Sadly, some of those captured were executed just a day before Munich was liberated from communist control.
Oh, wow.
These individuals were later held up as martyrs by the Nazi movement, adding to the Thule Society's mysterious and somewhat tragic aura.
So this secret society, born out of paranoia and fueled by chaos, ends up with some of its members becoming martyrs for the very movement that would later engulf Germany.
Yeah, it's a strange twist, isn't it?
It really is. You mentioned a list of members. Did any big Nazi names pop up?
That's what we're here to find out.
Okay.
The article meticulously analyzes the connections between key Nazi figures and the Thule Society, separating fact from fiction.
Okay.
And as you'll see, it's not as straightforward as some popular narratives might suggest.
All right, you've piqued my curiosity. Let's dive into these individual connections.
Okay, sounds good.
First up, we've got Gottfried Feder.
Hmm?
Remind me, who was he again?
Feder was an economist
Okay.
who caught Hitler's attention with his rather unique, some might say, radical economic theories.
You're going to have to give me a little more than that. What were these theories?
Sure.
Were they connected to the Thule Society in some way?
He believed in something called Brechen der Dienstknechtschaft,
Okay.
which translates to breaking the interest bondage. Essentially, he blamed Germany's economic woes on what he saw as a conspiracy of Jewish bankers.
Oh, wow.
Now, here's the interesting part. Feder was a frequent speaker at the Thule Society, sharing his ideas and theories with their members. However, the article makes it clear that he was never actually a member himself.
So, a connection, but not a full-blown membership.
Right.
Did Feder's theories actually influence the Nazi Party's platform?
They did, particularly in the early days.
Okay.
His ideas resonated with Hitler,
Yeah.
who incorporated them into the party's economic program. However, over time, Feder's influence within the Nazi regime waned.
Really?
Yeah, he ended up being sidelined despite his early impact.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got one down. Next on our list is Alfred Rosenberg.
Right.
Known for shaping the Nazi Party's ideology. What's his connection to the Thule Society?
Rosenberg's case is interesting because he's often portrayed as a card-carrying member of the Thule Society.
Oh, really?
Yeah, however, the article meticulously debunks this claim, relying on evidence from a surprising source. Rosenberg's own writings during the Nuremberg trials.
Oh, wow.
It seems his own words contradict this popular narrative.
So if he wasn't a member, what was his connection to the group? Was he just a casual observer stopping by for tea and conspiracy theories?
It's more likely he was a guest on a few occasions,
Okay.
perhaps accompanying Dietrich Eckart, who we'll talk about next.
Right.
His actual involvement with the Thule Society seems to have been minimal,
Uh-huh.
despite his significant role in the Nazi Party later on.
All right, bring on Dietrich Eckart. I'm sensing this guy might be a more central figure in our story.
He might be.
Who was he and what made him so close to the Thule Society?
Eckart was a poet-playwright and journalist.
Okay.
He was deeply involved in the Munich cultural scene and known for his strong anti-Semitic views.
Okay.
He had a very close relationship with the Thule Society, even seeking financial support from them for his own anti-Semitic magazine.
Wow.
However, despite this close connection, the article states that he never officially joined the group.
That's surprising. Why wouldn't he become a member if he was so aligned with their views and even sought their financial backing?
It's possible that Eckart, with his strong personality and independent nature, preferred to operate on his own terms. But what's truly fascinating about Eckart is his relationship with a young up-and-coming politician named Adolf Hitler.
Wait a minute. Are you saying Dietrich Eckart, this poet and journalist with ties to a secret society, was a mentor to Adolf Hitler?
He was indeed.
Wow.
Eckart became a crucial figure in shaping Hitler's worldview, particularly his anti-Semitism. He introduced Hitler to influential circles in Munich and essentially taught him the art of political propaganda.
Oh, wow.
While his own connection to the Thule Society might have been informal, his influence on Hitler was profound and far-reaching.
Wow. Okay, so we've got economists, ideologues, and now poets shaping Hitler's rise. What a mix. Up next, we have Hans Frank.
Right.
I remember his name from the outline, but what was his deal?
Unlike the others we've discussed so far, Hans Frank was actually a member of the Thule Society. He joined in 1918, right in the thick of things, and even participated in the fight against the Bavarian Soviet Republic. He later wrote about his membership in his memoirs.
Okay, so a confirmed Thule Society member. What did he do within the group, and how does this tie into his later role in the Nazi Party?
Well, here's the thing. Frank's membership was incredibly short-lived.
Okay.
It ended in 1919 after the fall of the communist regime in Munich.
Right.
His real rise to prominence within the Nazi Party happened much later.
Okay.
He became known as the NSDAP's star lawyer and chillingly the governor-general of occupied Poland during the war.
So a brief stint with the Thule Society followed by a much more significant and horrifying role in the Nazi regime later on. Is there any indication that his time with the Thule Society influenced his actions later?
It doesn't seem like it.
Okay.
His membership was more of a footnote compared to his later actions. He was involved in the fight against the Bavarian Soviet Republic, but it's difficult to say if that experience directly shaped his brutal policies in Poland years later.
Okay. We're reaching the end of our list here, and I'm saving the most intriguing for last.
Okay.
You mentioned Rudolf Hess earlier,
Yeah.
and from what I remember, he's the only top Nazi leader who was undeniably a Thule Society member. What can you tell us about him and his involvement with the group?
Hess is a fascinating case study.
Okay.
He was deeply drawn to the Thule Society's ideology, particularly its blend of anti-communism and occult themes.
Okay.
He played an active role within the group, even leading a counterfeiting operation during the Munich Soviet Republic.
Counterfeiting. Now, that's a twist I wasn't expecting. What was he counterfeiting and why?
Details on what exactly he was counterfeiting are a bit murky.
Okay.
But remember, this was a time of immense economic instability and political chaos.
Right.
It's likely the counterfeiting operation was an attempt to fund the Thule Society's activities and perhaps destabilize the Bavarian Soviet Republic further.
It makes sense that a group with such strong anti-communist views would resort to such tactics during a communist uprising. But we're talking about Rudolf Hess here, a man who became Hitler's deputy in the Nazi Party.
Right.
Did his Thule Society connections translate into actual influence on the Nazis?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And it's one we'll explore in more detail in the next part of our deep dive. What's clear is that Hess's connection to the Thule Society was deep and long-lasting.
Okay.
He remained involved with the group even after the Nazi rise to power, even visiting their headquarters as late as 1934.
Okay, so we've laid the groundwork here. We've got this secret society with its roots in paranoia and conspiracy, and we've got a list of Nazi figures with varying degrees of connection to the group.
Right.
Some were members, some were speakers, and some were just passing acquaintances. But the question remains, did any of this actually influence the Nazi movement in a meaningful way?
That's what we're here to uncover.
Yeah.
And the answer, as you'll see, is far more nuanced than the simplistic narratives often presented in popular culture.
All right, cliffhanger. I'm hooked. We'll have to wait for part 2 to get to the bottom of this.
Definitely stay tuned.
Okay, so we left off with Rudolf Hess, Hitler's right-hand man and a confirmed Thule Society member.
Right.
We talked about his deep involvement with the group, his role in their counterfeiting operation, and even his continued visits to their headquarters after the Nazis came to power. It's got to raise some eyebrows, right? Did Hess use his position to push the Thule Society's agenda within the Nazi Party?
Now, it's tempting to draw a straight line from Hetz's membership to Nazi policy.
Right.
But, the article argues that the reality is far more complex.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense.
Remember, just because someone's a member of a group doesn't mean they automatically control or influence the direction of that group,
True.
let alone a whole political party.
Okay, good point. It's easy to get swept up in the intrigue and assume a direct link.
Yeah.
But we need to look at the evidence. What does the article say about Hess's actual influence within the Nazi Party?
Well, the article suggests that while Hess was undeniably a true believer in Nazi ideology, his influence within the party waned over time.
Okay.
He was instrumental in the early days promoting Hitler's image, connecting him with powerful figures like Ludendorff, and playing a key role in shaping the party's direction.
But if Hess was such a believer and so connected to the Thule Society, why did his influence fade? That seems counterintuitive.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Power dynamics within the Nazi party were constantly shifting. As Hitler consolidated his power, he surrounded himself with individuals who were more pragmatic, more focused on consolidating power, and less concerned with ideological purity or occult theories.
Okay, I see.
Hess, on the other hand, seemed to retain his fascination with these more esoteric elements.
So Hess, the devoted Thule Society member, was ultimately sidelined because he was too focused on ideology and not enough on real politics. That's fascinating. It really challenges this notion of the Thule Society as the puppet master behind the Nazi regime.
Exactly. The article drives this point home by analyzing the overall influence of the Thule Society on Nazi policy.
Yeah.
And the conclusion is pretty clear. There's just no evidence to support this idea of a direct causal link.
Wait, so all this talk about the Thule Society being the hidden hand guiding the Nazis, all the whispers about their occult influence and secret agendas, it's all just smoke and mirrors.
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
The author argues that the Thule Society's influence on the Nazi movement has been vastly overstated, likely fueled by sensationalized accounts and a desire to find simple explanations for complex historical events.
I can see how that happens. It's easier to point to a shadowy group like the Thule Society and say, aha, they're the ones who orchestrated everything. It's a neat and tidy explanation.
Right, it is.
Yeah.
But, as this article demonstrates, history is rarely neat and tidy. The Nazi rise to power was a result of a complex interplay of factors.
Yeah.
Social unrest, economic instability, political turmoil, and charismatic leadership, to name a few.
Yeah, for sure.
Attributing it solely to the influence of a secret society is a gross oversimplification.
Okay, so we've debunked the myth of the Thule Society pulling the strings from behind the scenes. But that leaves us with an even bigger question. If it wasn't them, what were the real driving forces behind the Nazi rise to power?
Well, the article doesn't delve too deeply into alternative explanations.
Okay.
But it does highlight the devastating impact of World War I on Germany.
Right.
The country was reeling from defeat, burdened by reparations, and facing social and economic chaos.
Yeah.
This created a breeding ground for resentment, anger, and a yearning for a strong leader who could restore national pride.
It's like that saying, desperate times call for desperate measures, right?
Right.
People were looking for anyone to offer them a way out of the darkness.
Exactly, and that's where Hitler came in. He was a master manipulator, exploiting those feelings of anger and despair.
Yeah.
He offered simple solutions, scapegoats to blame, and a vision of a glorious future for Germany.
Right.
His message resonated with a population that was desperate for change and hungry for a sense of belonging.
So instead of some shadowy secret society, it was a combination of societal upheaval and Hitler's own charisma and manipulation that paved the way for the Nazi rise.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the Thule Society wasn't the only group promoting extremist ideas at the time.
Right.
There were numerous nationalist, anti-Semitic, and Volkish organizations vying for influence.
Yeah, of course.
The Thule Society, despite its later notoriety, was just one piece of a much larger and more complex puzzle.
But this raises another interesting question for me. If the Thule Society's influence was so minimal, why did their former leader, Rudolf von Seppendorf, try so hard to take credit for the Nazi success in his 1933 book? What was he hoping to gain?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
The article touches upon this, arguing that Seppendorf likely saw an opportunity to elevate his own status and perhaps even gain political favor within the Nazi regime.
Okay.
He was trying to rewrite history to paint himself and the Thule Society as the unsung heroes of the Nazi movement.
It's like he was trying to cash in on the Nazis' victory, claiming a piece of the pie for himself and his former group. But as we know, it backfired spectacularly. He was forced into exile, his book was banned, and his attempt to rewrite history failed.
It did, and it serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of historical revisionism.
Right.
We need to be wary of those who try to simplify or distort history for their own gain.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's our responsibility to critically examine the evidence, to challenge assumptions, and to seek out the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be.
That's a powerful message. We can't just accept historical narratives at face value,
Right.
especially when they're presented in a way that confirms our biases or reinforces existing stereotypes.
Yeah.
We need to dig deeper to ask tough questions and to be willing to challenge our own preconceived notions.
Absolutely. And that's what makes this deep dive so valuable.
I agree.
But debunking myths and exploring the nuances of history, we're better equipped to understand the complexities of the past and to learn from its mistakes.
So where do we go from here? We've debunked the myth of the Thule Society as the mastermind behind the Nazi rise, but we're still left with this burning question. If it wasn't them, what were the real catalysts? What were the societal cracks that allowed such a horrific ideology to take hold and engulf a nation?
That's a question that historians continue to grapple with, and it's one that we'll explore further in the final part of our deep dive.
All right, I'm ready to keep digging. Stay tuned, folks. We're about to go even deeper into this historical mystery. So we've spent this deep dive really picking apart this idea that the Thule Society was like some puppet master behind the Nazi rise.
Right, yeah?
But by doing that, we've uncovered an even bigger question, like, what were the real factors that allowed such a horrific ideology to take root in Germany?
It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, isn't it?
Yeah.
We start with this sensational story about a secret society, and we end up confronting the much more complex realities of history.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes this deep dive so compelling. We're not just regurgitating facts and dates.
Right.
We're like engaging in genuine historical inquiry. So let's continue down this path.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here? What other insights can we glean from the article?
Well, the article doesn't offer like a comprehensive analysis of all the factors that led to the Nazi rise.
Yeah.
But it does make a point of emphasizing something crucial.
Okay, what's that?
We need to understand the Thule Society within the context of its time.
What do you mean by that?
The article reminds us that the Thule Society wasn't operating in a vacuum.
Okay.
They were part of a wider landscape of extremist groups that emerged in Germany after World War I.
Right.
Remember all that societal upheaval we talked about?
Yeah.
The economic collapse, the political instability, the sense of national humiliation.
Right.
These factors created a breeding ground, not just for the Thule Society, but for a whole spectrum of radical ideologies.
So the Thule Society, despite its notoriety and connections to some early Nazi figures, was just one player in a much larger and more chaotic game.
That's right. And it's a mistake to focus solely on one group or individual when trying to understand a historical event as complex as the Nazi rise to power.
Right.
We need to look at the bigger picture, to consider the broader social, economic, and political forces that shape the environment in which these groups thrive.
Like we've been so focused on one tree that we've missed the entire forest.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to engage with scholarship like this article.
Yeah.
It challenges our assumptions, it forces us to broaden our perspectives, and ultimately it helps us to develop a more nuanced understanding of history.
Okay, so we need to avoid simplistic explanations and look at the bigger picture, but what does that actually look like? What are some of those broader factors that we need to consider?
Well, as we've already discussed, the aftermath of World War I cast a long shadow over Germany.
Right.
The war had shattered the old order, leaving behind this profound sense of disillusionment and resentment.
Yeah.
The German people were struggling to cope with the economic devastation, the loss of life, and the humiliation of defeat.
It's like the entire nation was experiencing this collective trauma,
Yeah.
and that trauma created an opening for extremist ideologies to take hold.
Precisely. And within that context, Hitler and the Nazis were able to exploit people's fears and grievances,
Mm.
offering scapegoats to blame and this vision of national restoration that appealed to a population desperate for change.
So it wasn't just about the Thule Society or any other specific group. It was about the underlying conditions that made their message resonate with a significant portion of the German population.
Exactly. It's crucial to remember that the Nazis didn't just seize power overnight.
Right.
They exploited existing societal division.
Mm.
They built a movement based on fear and resentment and gradually chipped away at the fragile foundations of the Weimar Republic.
It's a chilling reminder that even in seemingly civilized societies, the seeds of extremism can take root and grow if the conditions are right.
And that's why it's so important to be vigilant, to challenge prejudice and intolerance wherever we encounter them, and to defend democratic institutions and values.
Yeah.
The lessons of the past are there to guide us, but it's up to each of us to learn from them and to apply those lessons to the challenges of our own time.
This has been an incredible journey, and I feel like I've learned so much. We started with this mystery surrounding the Thule Society and their alleged influence on the Nazis,
Right.
and we ended up exploring the much deeper and more complex realities of history.
And that's the beauty of a good deep dive, isn't it?
It is.
It's not just about finding answers. It's about asking the right questions, challenging assumptions, and expanding our understanding of the world around
I
us.
couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive has given me a lot to think about, and I'm sure our listeners feel the same way.
I hope so.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of facts and dates. It's this living, breathing tapestry woven from the choices and actions of countless individuals. And it's up to us to make sure that the threads we weave today create a brighter and more just future for generations to come. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and keep asking those tough questions.